Welcome to Talking Sports by the Lake. Thank you for joining me by my sports house today. I have a big guest. I want to say thank you to my guest, Seth C. Payne, today, as are here to talk about the Houston Texans.
Hey there.
Welcome. So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Let's see. My name's Seth Payne. I feel like I'm standing up at a conference. I got drafted into the NFL in 1997. Played for the Jaguars for 5 years. Then I went to Houston in the first year of the franchise's existence in 2002. Played in Houston for the first 5 years. And now I host a sports radio show in Houston on Sports Radio 610. So I'm former player that's now a sports media bro.
Absolutely. That's actually pretty incredible. So we're here to talk about the vibe in Houston as Deshaun Watson makes his return after 11-game suspension. We're 4-7. I believe you guys are 1-7-1.
1-9-1.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me.
No, it's impressive. There's like a symmetry to the record that's almost more impressive. It feels like a mountain rising because there's a 1, a 9, and then a 1 here, so it just keeps rising out of the Texas plains as the season goes along. 1-10-1 won't be quite as pretty, but it's probably what it's going to be.
So, what are your expectations for the crowd as Deshaun Watson makes his first start?
I'll tell you, it's been a pretty sparsely populated stadium as the season has gone along here. I think the Texans started out with relatively good vibes at the beginning of the year because I think people liked Lovie Smith and things had been so dysfunctional for so long with the Texans that it felt like, all right, with Lovie Smith, at the very least, he's kind of an actual head coach as opposed to David Culley, who they had last year. But everything's, they keep losing. It gets worse and worse. So there have been some teams, like the Eagles game especially, it felt almost like an Eagles home game there. So I think there will be boos for Deshaun Watson, but it's not going to quite be the cacophony of swearing and jeering and everything that maybe people expect. Like when I talk to people from Houston or from Cleveland, I think people in Cleveland are envisioning, okay, what would it be like if the same thing happened and somebody went back to Cleveland as it is right now, where you guys you're the Browns. It's you guys. I played for Jacksonville the year we were up there, and they had to call the game because everybody was throwing water bottles onto the field.
Absolutely, I remember that game.
So I know what it's like in Cleveland. It's not going to be the same thing. I think that just because there's not going to be that many Texans fans there. And then the other thing, too, is, I think in a lot of Texans fans' minds, the fantasy would have been like, all right, well, Deshaun wanted out. He comes back to town. And wouldn't it be awesome if you beat down the Browns and embarrass Deshaun? The small minor detail that's missing this year is that the team is just atrocious. And the defense, the rushing defense is really, really bad. So it's not just Deshaun Watson. It's Nick Chubb, it's Kareem Hunt, it's all of those things. The matchup does not favor a huge upset.
Absolutely. So, what are your expectations for your offense coming into this game?
That's the really interesting thing because Kyle Allen took over for Davis Mills just because Davis Mills seemed to be regressing. It's hard for a second-year player who's playing behind an offensive line that does not have a good interior three at all. And let's face it, people were hoping that it might work out for Davis Mills, but not too many people really felt it. He showed some promise last year, but it would be a nice surprise if it would have worked out. So I think they went to Kyle Allen just to try something, to try to get back on track a little bit. And it was a mess last week. Maybe Kyle Allen was rusty and he'll get back into it. The one thing the Texans have done well up until a couple weeks ago was run the ball with the rookie Dameon Pierce. And Dameon was right up there in running for the rookie of the year until these last couple weeks where he started to drop off. It was also at a time when the Texans were going against some really good defensive lines. So Cleveland's run defense is not as good as some of the teams they've been facing. I think that there's a chance that the Texans return to making Dameon Pierce look like a rookie of the year. But like I said, the interior offensive line, they've really, really struggled. And that's like, I can't say it with confidence. Like, I'm really not expecting much from the Texans in this game.
So, are there any key players that you do feel are worth pointing out?
Yeah, I think as Brandon Cooks is always somebody that still has it. He's had an unproductive year. He's not the same guy that he used to be. The offensive tackles are probably one of the strengths of the teams right now. Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, Titus Howard at right tackle. So that's the matchup to watch, really, I think, is Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. As you guys have probably seen by now, Clowney will disappoint, and then all of a sudden, if it's a primetime game or if it's a game that kind of really matters, then all of a sudden he just turns it on. And it's weird. It was like Wednesday of this week because we'd been talking about Deshaun the whole time. It was Wednesday before I realized, oh, wait a second. Yeah, Clowney hasn't been back and played in Houston yet. We've played Clowney already since he left Houston, but Clowney, I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of turns it on this week just because he's that kind of a guy. I love the enigma that is Clowney. So that's a good battle between Myles Garrett and Clowney and the two offensive tackles. I think defensively for the Texans, Jerry Hughes, who a lot of people might remember from the Buffalo Bills, he's 34 years old. He's from Houston originally. Hughes kind of just came back and wanted to play in Houston, and he had other options, but he signed a one-year deal in Houston. And I think he just, he wanted to maybe be part of a rebuild or turning it around and being able to play at home. It's he's had a good year, but obviously he's not part of a turnaround. I think Malik Collins is the other defensive lineman who is productive in getting pressure. He hasn't gotten the quarterback down for sacks much at all, but he gets into the backfield. So, like, those are the guys that might produce on Sunday. Every bad team's, and you've seen in Cleveland in various years, every bad team still got some good players. The year you guys went winless or had one win, you had some good players on those teams. The other notable guys in the secondary, just because they're higher draft picks, is Jalen Petrie, who's drafted this year out of Baylor. He's been up and down. He's come up and made some big plays, but he's also been pretty erratic. He's kind of trying to learn how to play safety in the NFL. And then Derek Stingley, the number 3 overall pick at cornerback, probably isn't going to play. He hasn't practiced all week. This is his third week now that he's been dealing with a hamstring. So it's there's not really a position of strength to point to on this team, and I'm not trying to beat them down or anything. It's just this is no fluke that their record is what it is. They are a struggling football team right now.
Absolutely. And as you brought up former players returning to places that they've been, it made me think about the fact that the Cleveland Browns and Houston Texans have a lot of history when it comes to former players switching teams, whether it be from Houston to Cleveland or Cleveland to Houston, with guys like Christian Kirksey. We've made trades for each other. Absolutely, the Deshaun Watson trade that most people don't remember is when you guys traded up in the draft, which ended up helping us get Denzel Ward, I think, the following year or a year later. And then it also gave us Nick Chubb in that same draft.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the old Osweiler for Chubb trade, right? Was that it ultimately ended up being? Yeah, that's taking Nick Chubb with the pick that you guys got for Osweiler. Basically, I still don't know how that deal went through. Like, that's Cleveland bought a draft pick by taking Osweiler off our hands, which was nice of them to do, but it could have been. It would have been nice if you hadn't drafted Nick Chubb with it. And Chubb's honestly, Chubb's going to have a good day.
Absolutely.
The Texans' run defense the run defense has improved in the last couple weeks. Part of that, though, I think has been because Christian Harris, the rookie linebacker, has come along. He's a rookie out of Alabama. He missed all of training camp, missed the first few games. He came in and struggled in his first couple games, but then it kind of clicked for him. and I think he's made a difference. He's got an injured shoulder, so not 100% certain of his status right now. But I think this team, they've had some better numbers versus the run the last couple of weeks.
Hmm.
Part of that was, I think, because like Mike McDaniel Mike McDaniel came in with a 30-0 lead in the second half and just started throwing the ball and like without just for the hell of it. And Tagovailoa got sacked a bunch of times in the first two series in the second half, so they finally pulled him. And the Texans were able to mount kind of a face-saving comeback to where the score didn't look as bad as it was. But the rush defense has been hurting them. I think that's why, I think it's valid to say that Deshaun might have some rust on him. And, especially you look at the way he played in Jacksonville, it's understandable that a guy misses 2 years. He might be a little bit off, or hasn't played in almost 2 years, and he might be a little bit off. But I think that offense and with Stefanski's mindset, they're going to make it as easy as possible. They're going to run. They'll give Deshaun some nice, easy options, either as RPOs or bootlegs, to where he can either run or throw the ball without having to really stretch the ball downfield. And I bet I'm guessing the chance the Texans have to win this game is if Deshaun starts to get a little bit antsy and starts to want to push the ball downfield. Maybe he gets impatient. He just hasn't played in a while. He's excited, and that's possible. Deshaun's so level-headed about most things in football that I don't anticipate that being an issue.
Absolutely. So the one thing I would like to ask, since you do cover the Texans, is what do you think the mindset for Deshaun Watson will be today?
We were talking about that today. Deshaun's never seemed like a guy that is motivated by having a chip on his shoulder or proving people wrong or kind of – he's not Baker Mayfield. Like Baker, it felt like he was going out there like the water boy every time. Like he remembered anybody who ever didn't offer him a scholarship or didn't draft him or anything. And I think to his detriment at times that's how Baker Mayfield was or is. I think Deshaun, in the entire time that he was in Houston, it was always talking about, achieving great things. His motivation and the way he's driven is in – he uses the word legendary a lot. You guys haven't had that much time to actually listen to him, but when he gets comfortable and he starts talking about goal setting and everything, he talks about the word legendary a lot. Maybe, I don't know. He's been through some counseling and everything. Maybe he's changed a little bit, but he talks about elevating guys and achieving greatness. I can't ever remember him talking about like proving people wrong, or even really having an axe to grind with an opponent or anybody else. So I'd be surprised if that's any part of like what he's thinking. I do think that he is a guy that I think it's a weird thing to say because this could apply to any of us, but he likes being liked. I think he's always been very careful. That's what was so shocking about a large part of this. He's always been very careful about his public image, and very smart about it. Not in a phony way like Russell Wilson or anything. He's just seemed always very conscientious about that, and that's where I wonder if maybe that stepping out and confronting all of that might affect him somehow. But I do think he's always also been able to kind of shut out a lot of the noise and negativity and everything, and he might just apply that in this situation.
Absolutely. So when the Browns had Bernie Kosar, I was not alive yet. When I grew up a Browns fan, and we have this thing that goes around in Browns country, as I like to call it. We have the terrible quarterback jersey. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, the big old like ye old scroll thing. Yeah,
absolutely. So a lot of people are saying that we're finally going to be, as a fan base, able to burn that jersey or to bury it. But with you being a former NFL player, what things will we see from Deshaun Watson that we haven't seen in a quarterback here yet?
Oh, okay. That's a really good question because I was just thinking about you guys and the kind of gap between Bernie Kosar and now. And by the way, Brandon Cooks is ruled out this week for the game, so that's one more reason that Brandon Cooks, who's the hasn't been himself. And then Nico Collins, our draft pick from last year, started off looking good this year, and he now looks like. I don't think he's had over 50 yards receiving in about the last
Oh,
6 games. So I'm going to pull up your Cleveland's historical quarterbacks so I could try to. I think. Okay, so as far as Deshaun, just my 30-second scouting report of Deshaun would be he is more athletic than you realize. And nobody says he's a poor athlete or anything, but he's not blazingly fast like Lamar Jackson. So I think sometimes he kind of sneaks up on people with just how fast he can be. But part of it, too, is he's a little bit like Arian Foster was as a running back in that he just has a feel for what the defense is doing and where they're flowing. And he can kind of cut against the grain when he's running and figure out where the lanes are going to be. But he also does the same thing in the passing game. So when he's scrambling, he's not scrambling to run. He's scrambling and looking to throw. And he has a really good sense of just where the soft spot's going to be in the defense as they're adjusting to a scrambling quarterback. And that part's cool to watch. That's fun to see because it's almost like there's an artistry to it. And then you remember the knock on him coming out in college was that he had that his arm was weak, that he couldn't drive the ball to the sideline. He only threw it however many miles per hour at the combine, all that stuff. His arm's plenty strong enough, and I think part of it is that he's not Josh Allen, but he's got a really good feel and touch for throwing the deep ball and placing it exactly where it needs to go. It's kind of got a nice arc to it to where it drops down perfectly. So all those physical skills are just top notch. I think that the athleticism compared to Baker Mayfield or Jacoby Brissett or any of those guys is going to be pretty obvious. The thing that I think people might not realize about him is that he's got a very good work ethic that's not just for show. It's hard sometimes to praise people's work ethics anymore because everybody's so good about putting it on Instagram and painting themselves out as just somebody that's always grinding. I think we've seen when we were in Houston, we saw at various times there would be those points where you see that a young quarterback has that obstacle that he has to get over. And at various times, at one point, he was just throwing too many interceptions. And you could see him kind of consciously address it, and then it was done. It was just interceptions weren't an issue anymore. Picking up the blitz was a real issue going into the last playoff game versus the Colts at home. And in that next season, he changed it. He figured it out, especially DB blitzes and corner blitzes had been hurting him versus the Colts. He kind of fixed it. And there are a few times in his career when he's done that. So I was really interested when I saw an article in The Athletic that mentioned Kevin Stefanski when they were courting Deshaun in free agency. They mentioned that Stefanski told Deshaun, because Deshaun had asked for feedback or coaching points, and Stefanski told Deshaun that he had they felt like Deshaun could do a better job with his fakes. And that is, honestly, that's something that I had harped on and criticized Deshaun for the longest time. It would drive me crazy because you watch Pat Mahomes, you watch Josh Allen in the backfield. Those guys are just magicians. They carry out their fakes. They hold the defensive end back on the backside of run because their fakes are so good on bootlegs and everything. And Deshaun just was never really adept at that. And I think part of that was because I think Bill O'Brien wasn't necessarily the best at drilling down details like that. So I do think that, look, I played for Gary Kubiak, so I played against Gary Kubiak. Like the Kubiak-Shanahan offense and everything from that offense that Stefanski is trying to do, when it works because guys are obsessively focused on the details, and the deception is key. The quarterback fakes and all that stuff. The offense needs to look identical in certain situations, whether it's run or pass. I think that's going to take Deshaun's game to another level. Like if he and Stefanski jibe and they're on the same page, and Deshaun really listens to that coaching, I think it could end up being really good for his career and obviously for the Browns.
Yeah, that was definitely something that's been talked about, whether it's been here on the radio, the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, anywhere you can find Browns media, pretty much around here. That's been the one talking point of is their relationship and the things that they've talked about and what they could work on. But I would like to get to our final topic, which is predictions. What do you think this game will turn out to be?
Oh, I think it'll be lower scoring than people might anticipate. And it's not going to be because Deshaun doesn't do well. I think the game plan for the Browns is likely going to be, pretty conservative. I think also that people wouldn't realize, nor should they. Nobody's paying attention to the Texans. The Texans' red zone defense is actually pretty good. They're in the top 10 in red zone defense. I think part of that is because, look, they play a lot of zone. When they get down into the red zone, the defensive backfield, which might be the strongest unit on the defense, those guys can have more of an impact, and they can defend smaller zones. So that explains some of it. And I think that's where they've been able to be a quintessential bend but don't break defense. So I would say Browns 21, Texans 10 in this game.
Absolutely. I actually have it quite similar due to the fact that I think there is going to be some rust. I've had a lot of questions about are they going to take him out after the first half if we run away with it, put Jacoby into the game in the fourth quarter. And although I would like that to keep him healthy, at the same time, I want him to be out there as long as possible. I don't really want him to run up the score, but more so to get in the flow of things, to be able to see reads so he has more tape, more things to look at that he can point out and go into the next game.
Can I ask you a question about Cleveland?
Yeah.
What's the feeling up there? Because I've listened in on sports radio a little bit, and I've heard some of the comments from fans, and it feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, everybody's kind of unsure of how to act about this. Like, I almost feel like there's a lot of people that are pretty excited, but also understand the off-field component to it, and they don't necessarily want to be too loud about it. But on the football side of things, they're excited.
So that's actually a great question and a great point. The best way I can explain this is by two people: one, LeBron James, and two, Kareem Hunt. When LeBron came back, everybody thought, oh, we were a 60-win team the year before. He's not just going to come in here and destroy us and be all that. And we booed him, and he went out and scored 60. And then we finally realized, okay, maybe he was that great. We got out of our emotions. But the reason I also bring up Kareem Hunt was for his situation that he had gotten into. Also knowing that he was a Cleveland kid, grew up here, played high school ball here, went to school at Toledo. The tear was quite similar. It was that they don't want him here because of the things that he had gotten into.
Yeah.
But the management had done a great job about talking about, we understand the things that he had gotten in trouble for. We feel that he's been very remorseful. We want him to be around the team, to be around guys, and have a new culture as he gets his second chance. And then everybody loved him by the end of the second game. So what I'm thinking is going to happen as far as Deshaun Watson, he'll get a couple games. The bad part is I think we only have one more home game this year. But as time goes on, I think it'll flip-flop because a lot of the polls are saying right now that a lot of them are happy he's going to be playing, and then the other half is like he should never wear an NFL jersey again.
Yeah. What about Stefanski himself? I feel like Stefanski might be on more of a hot seat than people realize, depending on how Deshaun does over the remainder of the season.
Me personally, and I try to relay this to a lot of people, I don't think personally that Stefanski is on the hot seat that's been talked about because he made Baker look better than what Baker was. The expectations for Jacoby were so much smaller than what they turned out to be. The hope is that they grow slowly. I'm not expecting a 300, 400-yard game, 5 touchdowns, anything like that, but consistent growth. And I think that's what's going to save him. I think the coaches that are most on the hot seat are our defensive coaches, especially our defensive coordinator.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I know. I mean, look at you guys. I mean, you could be like a pleasant surprise playoff team just with Jacoby Brissett. And I know, and I feel weird saying just with Jacoby Brissett because he's played well. But I feel like he's more Jacoby Brissett is the classic guy who's in there in a pretty good situation with a really good rushing attack, and and then Amari Cooper, boy, Amari Cooper might be the one who ends up benefiting the most from it because you look at like Will Fuller. I mean, Will Fuller could never stay healthy, but that Will Fuller connection with Deshaun Watson was a really good one. I think Amari Cooper and the fact that he runs such good routes, it's kind of something that Deshaun hasn't necessarily had. Fuller was a better route runner than people thought because mostly I think people thought he was just super fast, but he was a pretty good route runner. But I don't think Deshaun has quite played with somebody like Amari Cooper in terms of route running. And Brandon Cooks is a good route runner, but Amari's just smooth.
Absolutely. I think the guy it's gonna help out the most is David Njoku.
Yeah.
Especially because of the way that we saw Farrell Brown, another Ohio native, go arcs. When he left the Raiders and came to Houston, his numbers in production, his playing time went up. And then he went here. His production wasn't the same. The play time was the same. He's a good blocker, a lot of effort. And I think that even with Darren Fells, who also joined you guys after being in Cleveland, his numbers in production went up, especially in the red zone. And I think that's something that we'll see soon enough.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I didn't even realize we had your comments section open. I'm a loss on you. You guys were really kind to me to keep me from. I almost brought down your whole technical production before the show.
Hey, we're all learning in this process, man.
But somebody had asked, around the block there are mixed emotions from Rust to is he really that good? Yeah, the is he really that good part. Because a lot of people have asked me that too. I think this is what I think was still holding him back in 2020. Remember, Bill O'Brien got fired 4 games into that season. They had gone they had done all that weird stuff. They traded away DeAndre Hopkins. Somehow David Johnson was going to supposedly look like he did in 2016.
Right.
There was a lot of weird stuff going on. So he played the last 12 games of the season without a head coach, really, and he had really, really good passing numbers. The thing that I was always concerned about, and it was really the run game, like we had just talked about. And I think Deshaun not necessarily driving the team and the offense the way a genuinely great quarterback does. And that's where I think the pairing up with Stefanski might end up being the really good thing for him. With O'Brien, everything always felt disjointed. It didn't feel like the run game and the pass game were really tied together. And as a play caller, I think those guys were just kind of just throwing mud at the wall and seeing what stuck. So that's from a purely football perspective, I've always wished that Deshaun were in a Kubiak Shanahan style system. So I'm excited to watch this experiment, so to speak. Feels like an experiment to me. For you guys, it means a little bit more.
It's at least for these 6 games, it's absolutely an experiment. So I agree with you there.
Yeah.
But I would like to say thank you for coming to my boathouse and talking sports by the lake. Again, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, on Twitter or Instagram at Seth C. Payne, and I've got a YouTube channel that I just started like 2 weeks ago.
Some great content on there, by the way.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's fun. It's cool. It's cool. I really like it it feels a lot more. You can actually get full thoughts out instead of like on Twitter where you can have a nice little half a thought and then get attacked for it.
Right, absolutely.
So the Seth Payne Show on YouTube. If you just search Seth Payne.
All right. Well, I would definitely want to say thank you for being my honorary first guest on Talking Sports by the Lake, and thanks for coming on. And we hope to hear from you soon.
Yeah. Hey, great. And good luck with everything. I didn't realize it was your first show until right beforehand. You're doing awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's see. Do I have to get out of here, or are you booting me out?
Oh no, we're just gonna drop our special first show episode outro, and then it's gonna be good from there.
All right, buddy.
All right. Thanks, man.